Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining me. Nice to have you here. If you're brand new here, of course, please do check down below for links that will take you back to the beginning of this series or the overall teaching series that I have putting out. They're numbered and in order, easy to follow. Try not to skip steps. For the rest of us, today, let's, as usual, settle into a comfortable, basic standing position. Letting your whole body fall open. It's such a luxury to have these quiet moments to be still, to simply stand here and enjoy the feeling of being soft, of being human. So don't miss it. Set aside whatever it was you were doing before, set aside your imagination about the future. Be here and appreciate the moment and the chance to let go. You've earned it. So while you stand there, let me introduce a bit of the part of the shoulder we will be opening and emphasizing the release of today. And that, of course, is the bottom of the shoulder. So far, we've talked about the top, we talked about the back, we talked about the front of the shoulder yesterday. And so today, it's all of this which attaches below. And you'll be thinking, below the shoulder? There's nothing below the shoulder. There's my armpit. Aha! Allow me to disabuse you of that idea that when all of this down here is frozen and it sucks your arm down, you often can't do much with your arm. In fact, many times if I treat frozen shoulder, different variations of it, it's down here that the problem is, somewhere in through here. And so let me give you a quick tour of the musculature under here. We have the ribs, often ticklish and uncomfortable, but layers of muscle in and around and between each of these ribs. They call them the intercostals, between the ribs. And there's a few layers of them, in fact, and they help your ribs go like this, for breath and for freedom of movement. And they can become strained and sprained and frozen, debilitated, weak, just like anything else. And we want to also allow them to be integrated in our overall capacity to move. So we learn to engage them, to feel them, and to let them go. Most people have no idea that they're there. And so let's start to explore that a bit as we practice the form. There's also the larger muscle here attached up under the arm, attaching all the way down actually along the spine, even in some parts all the way down at the sacrum. Covering your whole back are the lats, latissimus dorsi. And oftentimes this is what people imagine as the bottom of the shoulder. But there's many more layers of that. There's smaller versions. There's this teres major muscle, which attaches back in through here, just on top of the last muscle. And that engages part of the movement of the shoulder. There's even the infraspinatus here, which is technically, it's on top. It's in the back there. It's kind of the rear of the shoulder, but it functions more like the bottom of the shoulder. And again, I'm dividing these up more or less chaotically, depending on where you want to look for movement, because the whole body acts together. But we do want to realize that all of this is also part of the functioning of the shoulder. And like I said, even all the way down as far as the sacrum. And so we have to pay attention to how letting this fall open makes it possible for this to move. It also makes a big difference in the freedom of the hips, but we'll talk about in the next series how to release the hips by releasing the ribs. So just another moment or two for standing posture. Emphasizing exploring that space beneath the arms, beneath the shoulder. Maybe you notice your breath moving through that space. It's very common for stuck emotions to be trapped, especially in the rib side, for instance. Maybe this is frozen for you. So gently allowing the natural movement of the breath, don't force your breath, to flow through these spaces. Loosening them up, letting things soften like ice, turning into water, and beginning to evaporate. Closing. So the bottom corner and the outer corner of the shoulder, as we'll discover, tend to be the most difficult for people to learn to release, just because we have no relationship with this direction, with this area and feeling. And so as we go, there isn't a lot of complexity to it. You don't need to try to sink your shoulder blade in a certain way or align things so that your shoulders don't roll forward. You're not constantly letting go of something that's pulling up. None of that. Instead, we're consistently letting go in the same way of this tight band of tension that we tend to carry all the way around and below our back. We're constantly inhibiting our own movement by gripping. And so the reminder today is letting go, letting go. And you'll get sick of me saying it as usual, but please constantly pay attention to how the possibility of movement comes through here. Because as this opens, we'll find that the shoulder can actually be freed upward and outward and through. It will help all of the other directions of movement, planes of movement possible for this wonderful joint. So let's go. Closing. And some gentle circles. Both directions. So here it's easy to describe letting go of the top of the shoulder. It's even easy to talk about sinking through the leg a bit. I can describe how letting go of the back and the front of the shoulder release evenly across so that we're not rolling forward or tightening back. It's harder in the beginning to understand how beneath the shoulder also helps this movement go through. Because if I'm gripped here, everything is locked. Because it acts like a sphere around the shoulder. Any part of it being inhibited inhibits the entire capacity of the shoulder, creating pain, damaging circulation, creating movement imbalance, and all of the problems that come with those things. Disinhibiting. Also, of course, because this practice here, left, right, yin and yang, is just so amazing. While you're disinhibiting to go this way, at the same time, of course, on the opposite side, as you empty, feel this side opening. Don't lean, that's for a later practice. Just let it go. We're still moving relatively little. Don't lift your hand too far. You're just letting go. I'm just exaggerating so you can see the movement a bit. Softening those intercostal muscles. Letting go of your lower back, your tailbone. Remember, that's associated with the shoulder movement, funnily enough. And then softening the sides of the neck. You might be able to feel this, depending on the personal development you have of this musculature, attachments all the way down and through. And in fact, if you have difficulty placing your arms behind your back, if it doesn't come from your wrists, some of that difficulty may come because all of this is frozen down. So you're trying to undo some of this to make space for movement. And so as you warm your back here, this might be a prime practice for learning to release, to make a little extra room there. Being a little less creaky and cranky through the back and sides. So here, the obvious release through the ribs, side attaching all the way up beneath the shoulder, without lifting the top of the shoulder, of course. Maintain the balance around the shoulder that we've spent the last few days developing. And now explore letting this spread open. The armpit remains spacious. Tapering off. This may be one of the very best movements for exploring the opening of the sides and beneath the arm. So if you find it especially difficult, as usual, spend extra time here. Remember that part of a functioning shoulder is not clamping down along the side of the body. We talked about it a bit when we described standing posture practice. Hopefully you've done those standing posture videos a bit. One of the reasons for the arms following along the side is because the natural shape of the shoulder. And the arms will, in that position, naturally have a bit of a space beneath them. My arms do this just because of the shape of my body. Yours may lay flat or you'd be even farther out. It's okay depending on what your body is doing, as long as you're letting go. And within that, make certain that you're not habitually clamping down, tightening and pulling down, in the same way that some people habitually clamp upward. Not for any reason, this is just how they live. Hard to tie their own pants or something, but this process of letting go here, of that unnecessary tension, is the same thing if for people who clamp this way. Maybe you're one of them. In which case, letting go this way is the same feeling. It just goes that way, and this way, and this way. So notice if that's part of your habit, and begin to undo that a bit. Softening the pelvis. So even here, you might find that you clamp down. It's surprisingly common. I most often see it when people are doing closing posture and their hands are on their belly and they're clamped down like this. So soften open. Both directions. Some people talk about it as though you had a tiny bird's egg beneath your armpit, just to avoid clamping down and breaking it. But you don't have to do that as long as you're disinhibiting the shoulders. Notice that moment here in the back corner when this line is being asked to open. That easily traces up to the back and the base of the shoulder. Both directions. If you notice that there's a painful spot or a stuck place, please start extra slow and with smaller circles than you imagine, and then slowly ease into larger circles. See if you can find a way around or through the stuck place. Don't press through it. Don't force it. Teach your body to let go, to find more gentle ways through. Looking down and up. We're doing all of this to transform how your body-mind functions, the way it relates to itself, the way your nervous system engages. Looking down, pausing for a moment, allowing the full length of the neck to release, especially the top near the skull, and then slowly rolling up. So as you sink, don't pull down, release through. You're still lengthening along the ribs, even though your body is settling through. Don't clamp down on your ribs. Don't tighten your elbows against your body. Don't pull your elbows down. Find a different way. And my friends who are gym people, remember for years I was a personal trainer, studied exercise physiology. The development of all of this musculature is fine, but it's very, very common that people only develop in one direction. They only know how to get tighter. They get stronger, but they grow tighter and tighter and tighter. And we never learn how to let that go. So you want to spend at least as much time releasing tension and letting your body open and calm and become soft again as you put time into clamping down and getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And so most people that are part of this gym crowd that I'm hand-waving at only know the one direction. Please try to spend as much time learning to undo that so you stay soft and loose and strong. A healthy muscle is strong and soft, not strong and hard. The big difference. This may be my most favorite movement for exploring this area. Why is that? Because here I get to practice letting go of the top. Here I get to practice letting go of the front of the shoulder. Here I get to let go of the back of the shoulder. And here is where I get to let go of the bottom. People have asked me, how does my shoulder go up through letting go? Well, it's through letting go here, both directions. I let go here. You can see this open. My hip even drops because this lengthens. And my shoulder goes over. I don't have to tighten the top. I engage in such a way that my shoulder can go all the way around the circle through letting go. And I recognize that it's a foreign style of movement for most people, even more so than the other three so far. But you can do it. Letting go. It's one of the reasons for the shifting forward and back quality of this part of the movement. When I shift forward and I allow this side of my body to fall open, which we'll work on more later, it makes room for this to fall and lengthen in both directions. Tailbone stays settled. Crown of the head continues to float up. taking your time. This one might be even more tricky because you're releasing while the feet stay grounded and both are moving together. Softening from the hips, a wave of release through the ribs, along the back, all the way around. You can begin to feel that this is a circular release traveling all the way through your torso in different lines. The front of your torso, the top releases, the whole back opens, which naturally flows through the ribs, through the lats, and around the circle. Different kind of practice. But you can do it. Both directions. If you're having great difficulty with releasing these things, remember that the body responds to things like massage. Top of the shoulder responds really well to some harder work, deep work with your hands. Acupuncture, of course, works well. Cupping tends to work really well on the top of the shoulder, depending on what's going on with it. The ribs beneath the shoulder don't so much seem to respond to acupuncture in my experience, or cupping. Gua sha, a kind of gentle scraping kind of movement, can help, depending on what's causing the gripping, of course. Front of the shoulder tends to respond better to acupuncture. Back of the shoulder, some to acupuncture depending on what's gripped. A lot of people like to use cupping there, but I've actually had less success with releasing the back of the shoulder through cupping. Gua sha has been helpful. Heat often can seem really helpful if people have injured their shoulders in that area. Liniments, though. Actually, maybe if I had to choose the most common thing that I've seen people find help with on the bottom of the shoulder, I would say liniments are often really helpful there. The ones that I showed in the beginning of the series, like Jinggu Shui, can be helpful, and some others. But nothing works better than movement, because you need to retrain your system how to be. You can't just force it open. And I would say that, like with the neck, very often if you go to a certain kind of healer, what they try to do is use force. People start twisting and wrenching on your body. And to open the bottom of the shoulder, very often you'll get people who kind of pull really hard and try to force change through here. And I highly recommend avoiding that kind of therapy. It goes fast and creates its own damage. Remember that in general, fast injures, slow heals. And so finding therapists that work with you in a very gentle, opening, expansive way to free movement through here, adhesions, old damage that tends to accrue here, especially between the ribs, back and around the shoulder. Please be gentle when you find healers, and just work with the people who will work with your body, not try to use their will to force change into your system, because that rarely goes well, in my opinion. Feels nice. Feeling your shoulders move through that circle, emphasizing this moment when the rib side, the lats, all of this release and expand around. There's space beneath the shoulder, and it releases outward toward the hands. tapering off. Don't force your breath, but feel it move through the rib side, opening beneath the arms. Also down and up. You can allow your weight to shift gently from side to side as you turn your waist. And the empty side, release your hip, taking some of the space for your ribs. Feel this open space spreading along. Opening from beneath. Let's push the head side to side a little bit, mainly practicing that spaciousness beneath the shoulder. Neck turns easily. Don't add force. If you soften enough beneath the shoulder, it actually lengthens the arm, which turns your head through letting go. Softening beneath the shoulder. Let's come up the midline. Soften, make space along the ribs, back to the tailbone. Crown of the head floats up. Just use the weight of the hands, the weight of the shoulders to press down. Don't clamp, otherwise you'll actually tighten those areas that we're currently looking to release. As you soften down, notice that you can let this space move. I know most people are sort of frozen in their bodies here. So let this be part of the wave traveling down from your head. Little space beneath the arm. It's amazing to recognize in myself how frozen my spine used to be with all the scoliosis and the damage that you've probably all heard about. At some point, maybe I'll take a video of my spinal movement just so you can see this freedom that's there now. And it's not natural to me. I'm not naturally a flexible, soft person. So these methods really do work. And all you do is let go. Keep at it. Teach your body. We're not trying to be flexible like a gymnast, for instance, many of whom I end up having to treat in my clinic. Or the sort of stiff inflexible at the same time. Instead, be flexible the way a child is flexible. Just loose, released. Except that you take that childlike flexibility and you integrate it with knowledgeable and well-trained movement as an adult. It becomes something special. And you end up like Master Jerchung, having spent your whole life doing it. You're an old man, or whatever the equivalent is for you. Jerchung has this long white beard, and he's the most open, flexible, free moving person I've ever seen. He got injured at one point and his shoulder was damaged. He had frozen shoulder, and his arm and shoulder were still way more capable of movement than any other person in the class, including all of the young athletic people. We couldn't even see it, but he could feel the difference. And that was from an injury. So continue to let go. You don't have to do contortionist style movements. You just stop contorting yourself into tense balls. Your body opens. I love this opening movement here for releasing the base of the shoulder. This falls open. Nothing in the way. Rib side releases. Letting go. If you stop holding it down, it moves up more easily. What a concept. Here, release. Here, release. Release. It's the part that we're used to skipping. We don't pay attention to it. You can see, as I let it go, you'll see my hip push open because this lets go so deeply. There's so much extra space there just from letting go. Don't skip. It's one round movement. It goes all the way around the body, through the middle. Eventually, allowing the danxian to create the movement. Don't clamp. Expand. And then just quiet as movement goes through. Opening and closing without clamping, freezing. One movement we skipped might actually be quite helpful here. Open along the side. Opening, shoulder softens down. This doesn't get inhibited. And when your hand sinks, you don't clamp on the side. You close by sinking, not by pulling down. Feel the whole space beneath open, release, expand, all the way up through to the hand, both sides. Now let's immediately take that lesson into White Snake, that this opening can propel movement upward and through, and let's do the same thing here. There's an opening along the sides, beneath the shoulders. Shoulder blades sink, but this is released and expanded. Remember that your elbow only comes up as high as your shoulder lets go. So you don't need to come up as high as I am. Hips release, which helps to soften and make space for the bottom of the shoulder to open. Notice what a difference in your breath it makes to release this area. It's so expansive. If you were paying attention during the sinew channel discourse, you recognize that there are lots of different sinew channels that have traversed this area because we're talking about such a broad space. Easier to talk about the top of the shoulder. But the whole area is integrated and fills the breath, speech. Even when I do my Taoist chanting practices, sending movement down toward my dantian, there is this freedom of breath that I can allow that changes the quality of my voice, quality of the movement of my breath, as long as I am disinhibited beneath my shoulders. Letting go. Letting go. You can see it come through my hips. It goes all the way down to my feet when I release the bottom of my shoulder. It goes out to my elbows, pushing them around the circle. Here, softens, opens, releases around the circle. Gently massaging the rib side. As you move, don't pull down here. Let go through to the hand. Don't shorten and compress the ribs. Don't crush that little egg in your armpit. Here, soften, expand, expand. Even your hips sink a little bit because there's so much space being made through the middle. Expand. All the way around the circle. Make sure this hip releases forward, opening by twisting the rib side. This kind of movement can be very good for the rib side if it's been frozen. Softening. We're not making a complete circle here. I just want to make sure that people have the chance to emphasize turning the waist without twisting the hips. No matter how many times I mention this when I teach it in classes, people go back to twisting their hips. Don't do it. So let's do some extra golden snake movements. It's especially wonderful for releasing all the way through here. And make sure that you take the time to loosen, not just locally here, but that the movement seems to go out toward the elbow, out through to the hand. That's the direction of release for the shoulder, even down beneath. Letting go. Releasing. Falling open. Softening the opposite hip, softening the opposite hip, softening the hip to release the ribs. Just makes it a little bit easier. Shift the weight, softening the hip, helping to release the rib side, space beneath the shoulder. People have asked me about this one because I talk about how all movement can come from release. This is only one facet of that. But they'll say, how can I lift my arm like this without tightening the top of my shoulder? Well, part of that comes because you are letting go here, and it goes, it softens open and through. I don't know how visible that is to you, depending on how well developed your eyes are. This goes, you see it soften all the way along, through and around. And then again. Later, there come more subtle connections, internal movements, relationships with Danxian, with the breath, with the mind. The more subtle qualities of the body that respond to just quiet intent. Let's do that last one. Opening, expanding, softening. But for now, in the very least, don't as much grip on the top. Instead, more let go on the bottom. This starts to make room for those more subtle qualities, as well as being better for your chi flow and your whole body health. flowing around the circle. I'm hoping that at some point in the next 100 days, you'll start to be able to feel this circle of release around and through the shoulder that I'm describing. Again, here, if I just soften beneath, let go in the back, beneath here, let go in the front, release the top, release outward. The movements get easier and easier, and it starts to be able to integrate with the whole body, spherical, internal and external release that we're cultivating. And then it becomes a different kind of movement. Let's do one more on either side, just for fun. Feels so nice. And as you do start to feel that circle of release, as I'm now calling it, you'll notice that later when we do the exploration of the hips, we'll be developing the same thing. When we examine movement of the chest and waist, it's all the same until those spheres of movement become integrated. Hoping to paint slowly a larger and larger picture of the possibilities of the practice for you. It's so deep and wondrous that unless people are willing, like you, to take these longer explorations, most people only ever scratch the surface, and it's like a kind of localized or sophisticated calisthenics practice instead of a transformative one. Not that there's anything wrong with calisthenics. It's just not Qigong. I need to be able to say that with reverb. Qigong. Release beneath the shoulder. Don't clamp down. Just sink down the front and in the inside. Opening, expand. You can see it go all the way through to my feet. Make room beneath the shoulder. let's again today emphasize this direction of release. Softening through. And then this wave of release through the whole body. Remember that it's not about going low or deep into the posture. That's just what my body's doing. It's perfectly okay to only sink a couple of centimeters, as long as you're emphasizing going through the legs to the ground as best you can. You can also look up a little bit, lengthening along the front of the body. Lots of wonderful variations on this movement. Sinking through the body. And then even here, without going low, from the hips to the knees, through to the feet, just like basic standing posture. And then this sense of gathering up the earth, warming through the legs, especially warming the lower back, and then into the middle, that dantian. One more. Gently looking up, softening the front of the body a bit, opening the ribs beneath the shoulder, releasing through, gathering up the sky, down into the earth. Later on, as we are developing the dantian, this movement becomes much more important. Well, it's always important, but it becomes something we spend a lot of time on. So you notice in these last few movements of the form, we spend more time sinking in this direction, through and down into the legs. Make certain that you're not developing tension, but rather releasing your legs, your hips, your knees, your feet. And so I'll do this movement now. Same kind of emphasis. Going through your legs is more important than trying to go deep and low into the posture, because we want to be through our legs as we open them deeper. Even if, again, for my gym friends, if you're doing a squat or something like that, even a wall squat where you're staying in behind your knees, even in that case, don't hold yourself up. Sink through your legs to your feet into this position, even with a weight on your back, and then release. Don't pile up on top of your legs. Go through. Just as a tip for my friends. Only as far as feels comfortable. Lead with your hands. Don't clamp down beneath your shoulders. Lengthen. So again, I'll sink down further in this next one. I saved this toward the end so that we can have more of a concept of going through the legs rather than bending on top of them. I know I mentioned this a lot, but as you practice longer, it's more clear what we mean by going through the legs, not just stacking on top. Soften through your legs to your feet, lengthening open your spine. That wave down and through. Let's do just one more. Sink a bit more deeply than usual today, just for the sake of practicing. But see how far you can go down without clenching your legs. And then stop just before that point. Comfortable and easy. Very gentle. So here, again, the beauty of this movement and its capacity to help you move outward, which becomes especially important for tomorrow's class. But we want to release and relieve the ribs. The twisting, of course, helps. Make sure you're twisting your waist, not your hips. The opposite hip actually releases, it hangs. It almost moves the opposite direction because you let go. And as you release the hip and release your waist and soften beneath your arms, it becomes a really great practice for this bottom corner of the shoulder. Getting a little bit better about not whacking that microphone. You're all very patient with me. Softening beneath all the way out to the fingertips, from the armpits to the hips. Your whole body falling open. Let your mind be quiet, sinking inside. Spreading your awareness through your whole body. You can stay like this as long as you'd like. You could jump right into the classes in the 100-day series for standing posture as well. And just make that part of your morning practice if this feels very good. Otherwise, allow your awareness to soak into especially the neck and shoulders. And then into that space that attaches that we call the bottom corner of the shoulder. I know it's a large area. Just feeling into those spaces that have been opened by the practice today. Notice the difference. Your mind probably goes there more easily now that Qi can flow through there, because they are related. It's all related. That's part of the lesson here. taking as much time as you need to soften around the neck and the shoulders. I'll take my microphone off. But as a quick reminder, I'm always looking for everybody's help, communal support. If you're somebody with tight neck and shoulders, and you've gotten some kind of treatment or therapy like I was describing, there's a favorite liniment that you have, or a favorite method, a favorite sized tennis ball or lacrosse ball that's really helpful for you, please do put it down in the comment section. Let other people know what have worked for you, or maybe what hasn't worked, and all of that is valuable information. And we can continue to grow the community and to share resources with each other, because that's a huge part of what we're doing here. Thank you, my friends. Remember that your homework is to pay attention to the space. Notice if your habit is to clamp down for any reason. Often people will do it as a way to stabilize themselves. Maybe if they're handwriting, you'll see people doing calligraphy and they clamp down on the side as they do this. Even people using chopsticks will sort of clamp down. I don't know why. Maybe if you're driving, notice if you're clamping down and driving like this, you'll see people like that all the time. Just pay attention to that habit and then let go of the bottom and release outward through toward the hand, not just locally. That movement and energy has to go through someplace. So release it outward rather than, for instance, forward. And pay attention as well, as usual, to the emotional component. Are you clamping here because of a habit condition, like driving, for instance? Maybe you learned to drive that way when you were a teenager and now you still do. Or is it a way of coping, of sort of holding yourself, feeling protected? And notice the things that trigger that habit and let them go. And you'll probably find that some of that emotional backlash is dissolving as you release the physical piece of that. It's all about letting go. Don't force things open. Do go out and seek a therapist or a healer or a method, like I mentioned, the lineaments, if you can. But just doing this practice will really help. The more and more conscious you become of this aspect of your life, the faster you heal. You got this. I will see you tomorrow.